Hello there and welcome. I know a lot of you were waiting for this special video that I'm hosting here live today on raising private money. And I want to share with you a little bit my backstory with this. And then we're going to jump into, I'm going to give you the 6 steps. You should have received, or you should receive here, a PDF about this particular for you to fill out so you can follow along, and this PDF is going to be available here for you to write down the notes, kind of frame it as we get this going. So I'm going to wait to see if my assistant is going to send the PDF, and now we're going to get going. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is how I got into this doing private money. So back in 2001, I was already a real estate investor. I was wholesaling. I was out there doing already a lot of things. And I had actually tapped into some of my cash buyers in the late 90s, asking them if they would be willing to go ahead and um, work with me. So they would put up the money, and what I would do is I would find the properties, supervise the rehabs, and so forth. Okay, so that's what happened back in 2000, 97, 98. So I had about 2 or 3 people like this, and then in 2001 I decided, I says, well, I'm gonna go ahead and get this, rev this up and get this on a bigger scale. So I didn't know if it was gonna work, honestly. So the first thing I do, and this is the first step, is what I call the meeting of the minds. So I invited a bunch of people that were coming to the event. I invited a bunch of people. I talked to a title company, I talked to a real estate agent, I talked to mortgage brokers I was working with, and I said to them, if you know anybody that has the money to do this, can you please invite them to a meeting? And that's why I called it the meeting of the minds. So it was an informal meeting, just telling them, explaining, I sent an invitation out, explaining to them that I was going to have some real estate opportunity that I wanted to discuss. So between with my real estate agent, my title company, my mortgage broker, we came up with, and obviously people that I knew also, especially from my cash buyers, we came up with about 60 or so invitations. So we sent them out via mail. And it's funny because in my Private Money Made Easy program, I actually have the invitations that I shared right there and then, right? So I have actually the invitation you see that I sent out to people. And what happened then, it was like we sent these invitations out, and we invited them. And I still remember was July 11th, 2001. And we sent the invitation out, invited them to a conference room at one of the hotels, and then I was, had food. People like to come with first food, right? There was food there, and so that night I didn't know honestly what was going to work and what was going to happen, so I wasn't super prepared. So what I did is I brought in a bunch of my closing statements over the last 2 3 years, right? There was no PowerPoint back then, by the way. So I brought in a bunch of my closing statements and I put them on the table. I did it like this dramatic entrance where I came in, I spread them all over the conference table, and I said to them, okay, this is the closing statements for the last few years. And so they were looking, they were seeing I was buying property at a certain price, selling, buying and selling. Obviously there was a good spread in between. So that's pretty much, people said, okay, so how do we do this? How can we work with you in doing this? How can we put up the money and then you can go ahead and give us the same return, a certain return on investment? It was kind of funny because I had some prerequisites, right? So now that evening, like I said, I wasn't really ready for this. So the only thing I had, it was an application. So that's the second step, have him sign some agreements. So it was an application, and what the application was basically, their information, their phone numbers and so forth, and then how did they want to be contacted, because I told them this was on a first come first served basis. So originally I wanted only 10 people to give me the money because honestly it was not something that, it was widely available for everybody. I didn't know how it was going to work, so I says only 10 of you can do this. And then I decided that I was going to I charge them also an application fee. What? You're charging your private lenders? Yes, right? I charge an application fee. It was $1,000. And the reason I was doing that is because I wanted to make sure they were serious. You know, how many times you people say, hey, go ahead and if you find a property, let me know and I will invest, right? I wanted to make sure they were serious about this. So I wanted to say, well, if they pay into this, in making sure they're part of this elite group of people that can work with me, and they'll be more serious about it. So I charge them $1,000. So then they even did the meeting, I did the presentation. So I collected 6 applications, $6,000. Then the following day, it was kind of funny because I didn't even have the name of the company yet, so there were blank checks. Horrible. So the following day, I called my attorney and I said to them, okay, now I need some help here. This is what happened. First of all, he was like, what, you did what? And I was like, well, I didn't know if it was going to work. So I was kind of throwing out there and see if it sticks, right? And so I had 6 checks to deposit. So we went ahead and formed a legal entity, which is the base ground legal entity for doing this. Okay, and then we started doing the paperwork. Okay, so we did a ownership sharing agreement, a confidential disclosure agreement, and also a non-competing agreement. Okay, the non-competing agreement came later on. I'll explain to you in a minute. Okay. So the ownership sharing agreement is basically how I was going to share with them. Now, the great thing about doing this is that even if you're not putting any of your own money into the deals, by an ownership sharing agreement, the way we structured it, I could go ahead and get part of the profits without even having any of my money, right? So I got 100% financing for anything we were doing, plus I would tap in as an owner. So I will get the profits. On top of that, I got the confidentiality. Obviously, anything I was sharing was proprietary to us and so forth. And the no competing agreement came later on because this was something that was like, okay, don't compete with me. And that's the other funny thing. Not only I was charging them $1,000 for administration fee, on top of that, they could not do any of this type of business within 50 miles of the downtown area. This was St. Louis, by the way. So within 50 miles. So they couldn't do. And if they wanted to do any of their own deals or something else, they had to ask permission. So I had a couple of them that were doing things on the different parts of the county of St. Louis. So, we made some exception there into the agreement, but it's like I didn't want them to do that, right? So this is funny if you think about it, and so that's the thing it is. Again, it goes about setting expectations in everything you do with real estate. That's why we talk a lot about mindset, that people say, oh, you cannot do this, or that doesn't work, or there is so much competition out there, or this and that. It's all about your expectation. It's all about what you believe is going to happen, right? So I went in not thinking twice about charging people to give me the money, and not thinking twice about telling them you cannot compete against me over in 50 miles areas, and guess what? I got it. Right? So within 2 months, actually, we had over 10 people. So we reached the 10 within the first few weeks, because then it was word of mouth. And then I had a waiting list, but that's kind of funny, the waiting list. And then I opened up to more. And the first 10, some of them got upset because they said, hey, we have money. We can give you even more money, because the returns were so good. So you signed the agreement. So that was the second step. The third step was now I had to locate properties. Now I basically had like a blank checks, and I had to go locate properties, right? Think about this. If you had a blank check right now, what would it do for you, right? So we liquid funds equal larger inventory. That's the bottom line. So you can walk into banks and say, I'm going to buy all your REOs. You can go to auctions and say, I'm going to buy properties at auctions. You can, walk down the street and literally talk to people and says, I can close in 3 days. So that's the thing that happens. So it gives you almost a confidence, right? Not only I started going to buy at auctions. I never bought at auctions before, but now I knew I had a blank check. Why not? So we started going to auction every day. Actually, I hired somebody to go to the auctions for me. I start going to the smaller banks and tell them I'm going to buy any REOs you come across. I can close in 3 days. I start talking to people, like you're driving for dollars or whatever, or absentee landlords, and say, hey, I can buy your property and close in 3 days. What are you willing to take, right? So that's what happened. So the magic started happening. And the fourth step now, the way you can do it is this. Now, I did that's forming documents and legal entities, right? So I did form a legal entity, and there was a base entity. This is you need an entity when you go to auctions, or when you go to talk to anybody. You don't have the other entities in place yet, because the best way to do it, so you don't have to do all kind of different documents, because the SEC is going to want you to do things a certain way. There are things that I do that is above bar with the SEC, obviously, but they're not going to put you in a red flag, because what happened is especially after 2007, is a lot of people got flagged. A lot of people ended up in jail because there were not things that disclosed. If you ever watch the show American Greed, you can see a bunch of these people. They used to go from town to town, give great speeches, get people's retirement accounts money, and they never did anything with it, right? It was supposed to go to real estate, and they never did anything with it. So that's what kind of happened back in 2007, 2008. And what that said is after that, it became more stringent. But so the way you do it is you form a base LLC, okay? And mine is called Diversified Real Estate Investments. And then you can do an LLC or a corporation. And then the private money lenders are into this LLC, and you have to have an attorney. Now, in my program, I do have all the paperwork and everything that you need, so everything is in there. And then the other thing is you go ahead and, you have to incorporate it a certain way. Now, for each project, you can do a different entity for each one, So there is a different little bit of structure, but an attorney that knows what he's doing, he can do it. And I do have all the paperwork actually involved into the program. So now the next step is, what are your responsibilities? So what are you doing? You say, they're going to give me 100% of the money. I don't have to do anything. So what am I doing? Well, you can find properties, right? You are the one responsible for finding property. You analyze the deal. So you make sure that is within the mission statement of your business. You can do supervised construction as needed. I actually had my business partnership. I was doing more of the analyzing deal, finding properties, auctions, talking to the banks and so forth. She was doing more of the supervising, going out there, making sure all the work was getting done, because we were doing fix and flips. And then you sell or manage the property long term. So we also have a property management division to manage the property, which became really, really crucial when 2007 happened, because now we had the management. So a lot of these properties, instead of selling them, we moved them into rentals, right? We started selling them a few years ago, but because a lot of the investors wanted to cash out their money, because originally they were supposed to get their money back in 6 months, but 2007 happened. So with that said, it was a good way to shift from doing fix and flips to doing more rentals. So when 2007 happened, there was no lawsuits, no people say I'm gonna be mad. There was nothing like that. I've heard a lot of people in the industry, especially dealing with private money, had to file bankruptcy and they had to deal with a lot of things. I had nothing like that, because first of all, I had full transparency. And then I said, you know what, we can sell and get your money back, but we can go ahead and move into rentals and still make your money. Okay, better return than you probably get and taking the money, putting it in the bank. But so that's your whole responsibility. Now this is so cool. The 6 steps is your compensation, right? How you're gonna get paid with this? You're gonna get paid by acquisition fees. So when we buy property, we charge anywhere from 1% to 5% or a flat fee. Like when we were going to auction, we don't do auction right now anymore because they're too crazy right now. Everybody going to auction. There are not that many properties. But when we do auction, we do some auction still. I pay my acquisition, if he has to go there, the courthouse steps or whatever he has to do, about $1,000 flat fee. Or you can pay anywhere from 1% to 5%. If you're licensed real estate agents, you get brokerage fees, right? If you get the properties on the MLS or as an REO, you get paid a percentage upfront, your commission, and also when I sell the property after it's fixed up, I charge a percentage as a broker as well. You have asset management fees, which is a percentage of the gross revenues and assets cost, right? So you do that as well. You also get maintenance and construction fee, especially if you become like a general contractor. Obviously, you make money. If the job is going to cost 50,000, you might charge 55, 60,000, and you make money on that on top of the 50. And then you get the profit on sale or disposition, which is anywhere from 8 to 12% to you, even if you don't own, even if you don't have a penny into the deal. Because remember, one of the first paperwork you do is the ownership agreement, right? So these are the 6 steps I went over with you. So number 1, meeting of the minds. Number 2, it was sign agreements, have them do an application, and some of the other agreements, consultation agreement, operating agreement, and also non-confidentiality agreement. And non-competing. Number 3 is locate the properties. Number 4 is you form legal entity for a base entity and also one for each deal. Number 5, what are your responsibility? Make sure you set expectations with them as well so that they know. And that's one of the crucial things, because when like I said, 2007 happened, I didn't have any issues like a lot of people do, because I already had set expectation, and transparency had been everywhere. And then number 6 is how your compensation is. Again, that's set as part of the expectation, so they know. And then obviously they're private lenders. As long as they get their 8 to 12% return on their investment, anything else is like you're fine with that. They're not worried about you making money, right? You are making money, because at the end of the day, I can bring this deal to somebody else and they'll be very glad to do it if you don't like what you're getting out of it. So that's the thing, you have control. And that's one of the things I did in the beginning, because I charged them to let them know I was in control. I'm doing you a favor, you're not doing me a favor in loaning money. So it's about really shifting how you do the expectation and your mind around it. And that's how it works out. So it's a lot of information here, right? I wanted to break it down for you. And so that's why I said, I have specific training on this. I don't sell this training anymore, because this is kind of exclusive to some of our more advanced students. However, we do have a masterclass coming up next week. So the masterclass is starting on Monday. This is the last time we're going to do a masterclass here until the fall. Okay. So if you do want to learn a lot of these ins and outs and share a little bit more into my experience of doing things, I do highly suggest you get into the masterclass. It's literally the cost of a quarter tank of gas. Depending on what car you drive. My SUV is a quarter tank. My smaller car is about, I would say, 1/3 of a tank. And then also it's less of the cost of the pizza delivery. So just to put it that, so it's only $27. The masterclass is starting sharp on Monday, and it's gonna be in the evenings. So this time is the only time we've done it in the evening, just to kind of see where everybody's at, and so to offer it to everybody. But like I said, is gonna go into a lot of the different mechanics. I have a ton of experience to share with you guys. It's like, I wish I'm trying to bottle everything I know and give it to you, because at the end of the day, I've been in this business for 35 years, and I figure, if we knock on wood, if I passed away, this is gonna go to the grave with me. So I would love to teach you. And also, raising private money really is about doing this mind shift where you set your expectations, and where you always come in like you're doing a favor to them. They're not doing a favor to you, right? You're so lucky that you have me as your customer for private lender, because at the end of the day, you can trust me. I will give you a return on your investment, and that's the thing. I always deliver what I promise, number 1, and you under promise and over deliver, number 2. What I mean by that, so for example, if I promise them they're going to get 10% return on their investment for 12 months, and I give him a 12 months for my fix and flip. And most of my fix and flips get done much sooner, especially in this market. They don't stay. I still give him 10%, So it's like, even if I close in 5 or 6 months, they still get their 10%. And so it's like, what? Yeah, because I'm making money anyway, and I want to keep them. So my original investors, honestly, some have passed away since then, because it's been, almost 20 years now, over 20 years. So some have passed away, but the money has grown for the other ones that I never had to use any other money outside of those group of people. And obviously then I have my own funds as well. So that's the thing, how this thing can grow. And it's all about transparency. It's all about setting expectation. It's always about making a win-win situation. And then you can grow your business. By the end of, within about a year, when I was doing this in 2001, I was actually doing over 20 fix and flips at the time. Okay. Granted, 20 years ago, I was much younger, but I was doing over 20 fix and flip at the time, and we were doing about 12 to 16 wholesale deals a month on top of the fix and flips. Okay. Now we are, as far as fix and flips, we're scaled down a bit. I just, it's not something I'm really wanted to get into as much. We do them, but I cherry pick and I tend to do some different type of properties. But this is how the business can evolve, and the business can change and evolve with you. Okay. So hopefully this was helpful. We did give you a little handout here that breaks down a little bit more about the 6 steps that I share with you. And I would like you to write down beside the 6 steps, what are your takeaways? Okay. What your takeaways? What is your take from step number 1, the meeting of the minds? What is your takeaway from step number 2, which contracts you need to sign? And if you have to go back, you might have to re-listen to this video, definitely. Step number 3, locating the properties. Which properties did I locate? I'm going to test you there, right? How did I get the properties? Because one of the funny things is when I left the meeting that night, I had hundreds of thousands of dollars available to buy properties. And I said, I need to deliver fast before I lose their interest. So I share with you how I got my first properties. Number 4 is form legal entities. Number 5 is your expectations. And number 6 is your compensation. And you might have to go back into this video and rewatch it and write down the 3 takeaways from each. And that hopefully will give you a good overview of how to do it. And yes, anybody here can do it. And like I said, join me for the masterclass last week. One last time, I want to share that with you. We're not going to be doing them until the fall because we're going to be super busy actually this summer. Liz and I are revamping our real estate business, so we're going to be on the road a lot for business as well. So I'm not going to have the time to host masterclasses. So this is, if you've been sitting on the fence about it, this is your last chance to do it. And I look forward, everyone here, to talk to you soon. And you can always reach us if you are interested in talking more about it, even about private money. Do schedule a call as well. You can private message Liz, and we can get you on a call and see how we can help you out. Okay, take care. Have a great weekend.